The only one who really changed was Ronald Reagan, right? Ronald Reagan was a Democrat. He was a union leader like in the 50s. But it took him, and then he became a Republican, a conservative Republican. But it took him like 20, like, I don't know, 12 or 15 years after he converted in order for him to actually be elected president. So people don't really like you making quick pivots as as a big presidential candidate. Even Donald Trump, he was always been a scoundrel, and he basically ran as a scoundrel.
Yeah,
So
right.
he is the thing we always thought he was.
Jamal, it's good to be back with you for our weekly Trailblaze therapy session.
Hey, Nara, it's good to see you. Good to be with you. And I guess for those of us who are people who are just listening on Apple Podcasts and all the places where people get podcasts, they're not actually seeing us. They're just hearing us. And I'm glad to be heard.
Yes, we want to be heard. We do. I've been wanting to ask you a question this week, given the news that your former boss, your communications director for the Vice President, Kamala Harris, prior to her becoming the presidential nominee, and she said she's not running for governor of California now. So many people argue about how she should have future political prospects. It wasn't her fault that all this happened. So did she make the right choice?
Kamala made the right decision. She shouldn't have run for governor of California, I think. The risks were high in running for governor. If you think back, there are three big cases of former vice presidents who tried to run again for office. One was Richard Nixon, obviously, who, when he lost the presidency in 1960, decided to run for governor of California. He lost and then came back and became president in 68. The other one was Hubert Humphrey, LBJ's vice president. When he lost his presidential race, he went back to Minnesota. He ran and he won his old Senate seat back. And so he stayed in. But then the third one was Walter Mondale. And Walter Mondale tried to run for the Senate seat in Minnesota as kind of a last minute placeholder, I think after Russ Feingold died. And he lost that race. There are 2 out of 3 times when the vice presidents go back home and try to do it again, it doesn't work out. The reason I think that's hard for people, and I think we saw this a little bit in New York in the Andrew Cuomo case as well. Once you've kind of been on that big stage and you got to go back to the local politics, you got to go suck up to that county commissioner that maybe when you were in the vice president's office, I don't know if that person got a chance to have a meeting or not have a meeting. You got to go back and do the deal the way you did it before. And it's a hard thing to do. And, she hadn't run for office in California since 2016. So in 9 years, California politics have changed a lot. And so, I would just advise I advise some of the folks who don't talk to her is that if she wanted to run, she had to treat it like it was her first time running. She can't assume a single thing about California because it's been so long since she's actually run for office there. So I just think the risk was high. If she lost that race, she would have it would have tarnished her reputation and her kind of iconography as being the first woman vice president, the first Black woman, the first South Asian woman vice president. It would have tarnished that. And what's the point? Unless she really wanted to be governor of California. And if that's what she wanted to do, then she should do everything possible to make it happen.
Well,
if she was doing it as a stepstone, then she could wait.
Right. That's the thing is there's so many people who have come up in these electoral and political systems. And when they hit a ceiling, they look for some other avenue, which I totally get. This is what you've been doing. This is kind of what you're built for, what you've been trained for. But also, there's a point when it's done. Right. There's other ways to do it. It's not about, it really doesn't come, like you said, it comes down to, do you really want to do the job itself? Do you want to serve the entire state of California, or do you want to keep a political career up and running? And it's hard to translate, like you said, if you haven't run there for 8 years. I was vice president. I tried to run for president. But by the way, no, really, I do. I just want to do the job for you guys in California. Right. Like that's a really tough connection to make. And yeah, I guess, but she's young enough that it must be hard to think that this is the end of a political career, but she's also been young enough to have an entirely second legacy if and when she chooses to do that. We haven't seen a book tour or anything like that happen yet, have we?
We haven't, but today she announced, HarperCollins announced today that she has a book coming out. Kamala Harris has a book coming out. She did an announcement. You'll see it on TikTok and on Instagram and all the socials. It's called 107 Days. And it's supposed to be her behind the scenes take on what happened during that historic campaign. And that's what she's been up to for the last few months when everyone else has been looking for her to step up and speak out. She's been writing this book. So it also, I think, looks forward to what she thinks we ought to be doing now. So we'll see. We'll see how revealing it is. Kamala Harris
Mhm.
isn't known for being a very revealing person
Oh,
about
you
her
would know.
personal thoughts.
You
Yeah,
would
she's
know.
not. So
Like, no,
I'm very
even
curious about
in
that.
a professional setting, even in a
Yeah.
professional setting, right? Very guarded. She's got her inner circle of people that she really reveals herself to, and that's it.
Yep. She can be a little salty and spicy behind the scenes when you're in a one-on-one or a small group of advisors, but where you hear some stories. But mostly, she likes to keep it classy, as they say.
Yeah, keep it
Yeah.
classy. Thank you. That's helpful. And I am, however much I hate to see a
What do you
woman who
think?
has been like, yeah, however much I hate to see a woman who has done lots of firsts to have
Hmm.
to stop.
Hmm.
It just, there is also that knowing when to pivot, move on, or just take a beat. And so I was really glad that she was not immediately sucked into the, why isn't Obama, why isn't Harris, all these people who were talking about democracy, why aren't they? Yo, they did it. They tried. They told
Right.
you, majority of the country did not vote for them. Here we are. Right? Like, it's stop looking to everybody else. This is a voter and a citizen problem right now of what has to be solved. Stop looking at everybody else, former leaders, to try to rescue people, right? Especially, it always comes up with black leaders
Yeah.
too. Like, Obama's going to save everybody. Also, Obama, not the I don't know.
Well, this
His
is why I'm laughing.
journey.
People can't see me because I'm laughing because what Barack Obama would say is, "Oh, they voted for me." You said that they tried and people didn't vote for him. Obama would say, "They voted for me twice."
True. Truth. Truth. They did that. They did that. He's like, but
Yeah.
it's also like been there, done that.
Right.
Yeah, and it's right what we expect of the formers or the people who tried and didn't make it. It's funny you mentioned vice presidents, and for whatever reason, I was trying to hear Dan Quayle's about him. Whatever happened to him? He
Oh
was the butt of so
yeah.
many jokes.
Yeah. So Dan Quayle basically lost it at the potato. That E took him out, and he never recovered.
Potato. Um, I'm
Yeah.
also
But
wondering.
vice president's job, being vice president's hard. We've talked about this before. Being vice president's really hard because you're really a backup singer. And so you never, it's so hard for somebody who's been a vice president to step up and be the front leader, just because people are so used to seeing you, kind of stand behind somebody and nod affirmatively at whatever it is they say. So it's hard for you to go from that to being the person who's speaking up, out front. Very few of them have actually made it across that finish line.
Very few, and mostly in the Republican Party, but which leads questions to what's JD Vance been up to? I haven't seen him out and about lately. Haven't really heard much. I mean, right, there's the whole let's trot him out to pass the big beautiful bill, but like everybody else, he's probably having trouble keeping up with whatever it is that Trump is doing these days.
Yeah, there's all the like sub genres, like the subreddits about whether or not like JD Vance calling for the release of the Epstein files is really like a subtle play to get Donald Trump impeached.
Good
Like,
job.
he knows that if they actually let out what's in those files, there's no way Donald Trump makes it. So we'll see.
Well,
I think JD Vance is not a phenomenal political figure, so I'm not. I shouldn't say that, but I'm not especially worried about him.
I mean, it's phenomenal in the sense that, oh wow, you won Senate and you won out of Ohio. Cool, cool. But there's just so much to unpack with this conversion to Trumpism, and again, he's vice
Yes.
president. Like, it's very hard. It's
Yes.
going to be very anybody. I mean, listen, Trump's last vice president almost got hanged at January 6th with the encouragement and urging of that noose from his president. So I don't know how JD Vance is going to navigate the next 3 years, and try to set himself apart. Or
I
I
mean, if
guess
you
he's.
think about it, the presidents that we've had have all been pretty consistently whatever they are, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, Obama basically gave one speech in 2004 and he said the same thing over and over again for the rest of his political career, or Joe Biden, who was like that man from, the working class Joe or whatever. Like, people kind of know this thing. The only one who really changed was Ronald Reagan, right? Ronald Reagan was a Democrat. He was a union leader like in the 50s. But it took him, and then he became a Republican, a conservative Republican. But it took him like 20, like, I don't know, 12 or 15 years after he converted in order for him to actually be elected president. So people don't really like you making quick pivots
Mhm.
as as a big presidential candidate. Even Donald Trump, he was always been a scoundrel, and he basically ran as a scoundrel.
Yeah,
So
right, right.
he is the thing we always thought he was.
Your Reagan example is interesting because it's if you look at the through line, it's not as much of a pivot as people would think it is from Democrat to Republican, because
Mm,
that social period in time, many union
right.
leaders of the 50s went where other white people were going to be benefited, and not, not the idea of equal opportunity among all races, right? So it makes
That's
his
right.
that's his through line, and we've seen that in so much of so many of the policies that he instituted at the state level and then at the federal level. I mean, even not wanting California colleges to be free for everybody, because that would mean you were educating an entirely different population than the folks who, if you paid, had to pay for it and made it semi-private institutions. Different population gets educated. So that's all student loans. Everybody can thank Ronald Reagan for that. The whole generation thank Ronald
Mm,
Reagan. I did want to ask you also, because I noticed that you wrote this in your Substack, which is Kill the Spider. Kill the Spider?
yes. Killing
Yes,
the
Kill the
spider on
Spider.
Substack.
And you were talking about the fear economy. And
Yeah.
I'm going to connect this to Halloween candy. I
Yeah.
I was in Safeway and walking out, and there's a whole wall of the big bags of Halloween candy. I'm like, it is not even August yet,
Wait,
and
whoa, 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 whoa. You mean you aren't just thinking like, oh, this is the kind of candy one might buy for Halloween. You mean like it was the actual Halloween
yes,
display
I
candy was up. Oh man,
branded, like all of the branded, with the ghosts and the da 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 and all of the colors. Yes,
that's
that
bananas. It's not
it's
even
not
Labor
even
Day.
August. Yes, it was all up, big bags and lines, and I'm like, oh, like the 2 for 1 and the sale, and I'm seeing, I'm like, what? Why? First of all, nothing about this feels Halloween because it's not even close to fall. It's really wet or really really humid, hot. But like, are they trying to get ahead of the hoarding that people have been talking about, the consumer potential for hoarding while things are still cheap, right? Before tariffs hit and all these other things, and inflation really hits, let's grab stuff. Is that why they're doing it? Otherwise, I
Right.
can't figure out, because I literally looked at it and it turned me off that you're trying to push another holiday down my throat 5 months early. But that was the idea of like, well, maybe there is an economic business reason to offer these types of sales and discounts and try to move product now as quickly as you can, because you're not convinced as a company that you're going to be able to move the product in the usual season or in the winter.
Yeah, no, totally. That could be true. And you know what's really going to be true is getting a costume, because all those costumes are made, in
Yes,
Asia
they're made
someplace.
overseas.
So how much are those
Right.
costumes going to cost by October once those tariffs kick in?
I mean, I'm okay
It's
with
going
the
to be
get
nuts.
back to homemade junky costumes, but that also required a lot of labor.
You want your kid with like a red handkerchief around his neck and like a cowboy hat and like
What
something. He's
happened
like,
to
oh, look at you,
regular costumes?
You're Woody from Toy Story.
What happened to the regular? Like, oh, look, here's some chalk in your hair. You're an old man.
Yes, exactly.
Like, here you go. That's all it
Yeah,
is.
that's a good way to do it. That's a good way to do it. Or like, all the little girls who are in black leotards with a cape and like a big hat and they're
That's it.
witches, right?
Which, or put like, oh,
That's it.
this year we're gonna put a little black nose and some lines. There you go. You're a cat now. There you go. And listen,
Yeah, like a big mole on your cheek.
I say
Yeah.
this as a parent who has not only sewn bespoke costumes for my daughter last year. She wanted to be a very specific character from the cartoon slash book Go Dog Go. And we also have done family
Mm,
costumes over the years. And even I would not mind all of that disappearing and just make it easy. But
that's
back to that
awesome.
idea, the
That's awesome.
fear
But yeah,
economy.
but
What
fear.
do you mean
Yeah.
by that then?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about how Trump does his business, it's just an incredible amount of intimidation and fear that he goes around. So I've just been reading all these stories about different populations of people who are afraid that they're about to lose something in the Trump economy. One of them that jumped out at me were all the parents, especially parents of newborns, who are rushing to get their babies and their young kids vaccinated because they're afraid that RFK Jr. is going to get rid of the vaccines, and certainly maybe Medicaid won't be paying for the vaccines anymore. We've already heard the fear about rural hospitals that are going to close because of the Medicaid cuts in the last big bill that they did.
That's not even fear.
And then
That's
there was the
reality, because big hospital
right, it's
systems have
happening.
started announcing that. They've started announcing their closures.
Absolutely. So people who live in these communities who are worried, like, I'm gonna have to drive an hour and a half to go get a doctor's appointment, or something happens, where do we get emergency care? So that's a real thing. And then another thing, again, let's stick on the rural point just for a second, that they appointed The new Postmaster General of the United States is a FedEx board member, a former FedEx board member, but he still owns stock in FedEx that he hasn't sold yet. And so he's supposed to be in charge of the public postal service, which has a mandate to deliver mail to everybody in the country with an address 6 days a week, right? But it's inefficient. It just doesn't make any financial sense to do it. Like, it's a market failure because people is too Spartan and it's too hard to get to places. But that is the government's job, is to
Yes.
deliver a service to people wherever they are, because we believe everybody ought to be connected.
Right,
But if
because
you're
it's
the
not
head of
about the
FedEx and you
profit.
think
It's not about the profit.
it's not about the profit,
Yes.
right? But if you're a FedEx guy and you think about the world like these efficiencies and maybe we should privatize it, and so all these people who live in rural communities who are now concerned that they're going to have their postal service cut back on because some suit from FedEx has decided it just doesn't make any money. So everywhere you turn, people are starting to get more and more, and obviously we know the big stories about the universities that are cutting deals with Trump to be monitored because they're afraid of losing money. We saw Paramount and its decision to do a bunch of things that look like they were trying to kiss up to the White House so they could get their big merger deal done. There are all these cases of people who Trump goes out and threatens them in a big way, and then maybe he pulls back a little bit, like tariffs, with a 30% tariff, and then do a bunch of negotiations. Now it's a 15% tariff. And we're all like, phew, it's only 15%. Except it used to be 3%, right? The tariff was 3%. We just had a 12% increase in prices that we let this guy get away with because he started at 30 and ratcheted it back to 15. So anyway, people are
And
afraid,
this
they're buckling, and he keeps coming for us.